So our next speaker is Mark Platshon. Mark is a senior advisor with BMW I Ventures. He will speak to us about the future of autonomous vehicles and the challenges and opportunities they present to the future of transportation, planning, and infrastructure. Mark? Thank you.
Hello. Cities are built on their transportation. Cities, economies, societies only move if the transportation works. I work for BMW, nice little car company, but I also worry a lot about what is going to happen. How does the autonomous car, how does the autonomous vehicle change the world? How does it change everything? Welcome to 2015. This is, as we've said, the world where Uber is the largest taxi company and owns no cars. Airbnb is the world's largest hotel company and owns no real estate. The smartphone has changed everything. This is an industrial revolution. Industrial revolutions create disruption. They create enormous opportunity. But just for a second, there's kind of two different sides to the disruption problem, right? Who knows the difference between a Kodak, who remembers Kodak moments? Yeah, well, that has a different meaning these days. And now there's a Nokia moment as well. So just to draw the difference, if you remember, Kodak was in the film business. They didn't believe that a photo could have any value unless it was printed. So while the whole world, thousands of companies were going digital, Kodak tried to prevent it and slow it down. They went from 25 billion to 0 in exactly a decade. Meanwhile, Nokia was in a very different situation. They and their clones, whether it's Motorola or Ericsson or Siemens or Samsung or Sony, were happily making cell phones, very complacent that no one could penetrate that club, much less a little computer company in Silicon Valley. Obviously, when the iPhone came out, what happened? Market share cratered inside 3 years. They were virtually gone. So let me tell you a little story about disruption and tipping points. All stories start with once upon a time. Once upon a time, everybody used the gas ones. There was a huge gas support infrastructure. Everybody understood how to use the gas ones. And yeah, there were a few people on the fringes that were playing around with the electric ones. They didn't work very well, they didn't last very long, they were expensive, they weren't very reliable. So most people had the gas ones. But the material scientists, the engineers, the scientists, kept banging away on trying to make the electric ones better. And suddenly they got good enough. And what happened? In 1 decade, the entire gas infrastructure was ripped out, the entire electrical infrastructure was installed, and everybody used the electric ones. Almost a complete switch in about 10 to 15 years. What am I talking about? These guys, Thomas Edison and the lights. Now, you don't have to change too many words in that story to make it apply to batteries and electric vehicles, because half of you were already there. So we're at the beginning of a big arc of disruption, an arc that starts with electrification of the automobile, the connected automobile, the autonomous automobile, and what I call the Uberized automobile, the complete change in desire for ownership and usefulness. So let's talk about what that disruption means. Is disruption always bad? Gee, if disruption could in fact relieve traffic jams, get rid of these horrific accidents we have on the road, clean up the environment, and give mobility to people who otherwise couldn't get around, that's not disruption, that's opportunity. That's a tremendous opportunity. So when we think about how these changes are going to affect our world, how it's going to affect the built environment, cities, urban planning, how society works, I've come on this little book that Steve Johnson wrote that I encourage all of you to read. His basic thesis is the core invention and its kind of direct consequences. Those are pretty understandable. They're pretty clear. Everybody gets it. You invest against that, and good things happen. He argues that it's the indirect consequences, the stuff you couldn't have possibly anticipated, that actually make these transitions, these changes, these industrial revolutions really into a big deal. Let me just give you an example, because what I want to do is sort of get you thinking about this mode of strategic planning, and then we want to apply it to how our cities are going to change and how autonomous driving and autonomous vehicles are going to change everything. So it's pretty obvious. One of the ones he uses is the printing press, right? The printing press, the Gutenberg printing press, printed more material. So you could disseminate information better and education would be changed. And that's a direct consequence of huge magnitude and huge importance. But what they didn't know at the time, couldn't have anticipated, but now looking back, we know, you didn't know at that point, until you had lots of stuff to read, you didn't know how many people needed glasses, like this, right? And now that you knew how many people, and the glass industry used to make bottles and windows, but suddenly there was a big market to make lenses. Nobody needed lenses before that. And those lens makers started playing around. And they'd put two lenses together and look down in their water or their bread and go, holy cow, there's stuff I've never seen before. And they put their lenses together and they looked at the sky and they said, holy cow, there's things I've never seen before. And so the printing press indirectly created microbiology, space, time, medicine, and all those related sciences. That's the kind of sort of indirect, nonlinear consequences we need to push ourselves to think about and then invest against those. So when we talk about autonomous cars, we can talk about, yeah, it's going to make it easier for people to drive and not fall asleep. But think about, how does it affect housing? How does it affect discretionary income? What's it going to do to the healthcare system? How does it change senior and elder care? What's it going to do to vacations and travel? How's it going to disrupt Southwest or your local airport or Boeing or Airbus? I think we'll show you that when you think about this as a system, it changes everything. So just a quick story to illustrate a couple of these. So I'm kind of the car guy in my network, obviously. Friend called me up. He lives in San Francisco. He said, I'm selling my 5 Series, and I expect the next question is, and what should I buy? He says, I'm not replacing it. I use Uber to get to work, and if I want to run a sports car on the weekend, I get it from relay rides, so I'm not buying a replacement car. I'm hearing that a little bit in the city. But then his wife chimes in and says, and we're converting the garage into a student apartment and renting it out on Airbnb. Now, tens of thousands of garages in the city could be converted to student apartments. And we have a desperate need for affordable housing in this city. And densification is a great thing if it works. $200 billion a year. Who could find a good use for $200 billion a year? Yeah, well, that's what we spend, I would say waste, on car insurance every year in the United States. $200 billion. For accidents that are virtually entirely preventable. 90+% are human error, not cars breaking down and having terrible things happen. And what if you could give back $1,000 per person per year to their discretionary income so that that would power up the economy? That's huge. Of course, we've had big battles about something called the Affordable Health Care Act, right? But we actually have the solution right in our hands. All we need to do is deploy smart cars, and we end up with the Avoidable Health Care Act. We avoid 33,000 fatalities a year just in the United States, 1 million around the world, 2.5 million ER visits, $18 billion of economic impact. Now, there's a disruption that's got to be a good thing. What if you could lower the cost of logistics? What if, right, the driver is half the cost of freight? The driver is 70 to 80% the cost of Uber. What if transportation would go from $1 a mile to 20 or 30 cents a mile? What if freight came down by a half? What would that do to economic activity? What would it do to redesigning our whole distribution systems? And we really love flying. It's so much fun. But what if driving looked more like this? What if we wanted to go to the Grand Canyon and hike the Grand Canyon tomorrow morning? What if I said, come on, let's go get in the car. We'll sit in the car, we'll watch a movie, we'll eat a meal, we'll take a nap, and we'll wake up at the Grand Canyon tomorrow. What if I have a meeting in LA tomorrow? Would I fly down tonight, get a Motel 6 or Hyatt or Airbnb, and then go to my meeting the next day? Or would at 10 o'clock tonight, I go get in the car, lay down, watch a movie, go to sleep, go to the gym down in LA, and I'm ready for my meeting? I don't stay in a hotel at all. So let's talk. Lots of people have used Uber. We talked about that. But let me put some numbers on Uber, because I don't think people understand the impact that Uber actually has. The San Francisco, Uber's a little more mature here, so we'll use this as sort of a template for what's happening around the world. Uber did taxi industry in San Francisco area, about $200 million a year top line revenue before Uber. Nice industry, right? Everybody wants to know, how much did Uber hurt the taxis? Well, it hurt a lot. It took them from about 200 million down to about 140 or 150 million. It took about 50 million away. The drivers moved over instantly. They didn't get hurt. But the guys who owned the medallions, yeah, they were suffering. So how much did that hurt? They are now doing $1 billion in that exact same geography. They only took 50 away from taxis. Where did $950 million come from? It came out of cars. It came out of parking. It came a little out of mass transit. And it's still growing at a rate that's straight line. It'll probably be $2 billion in that geography next year. That's why, and let's face it, San Francisco is a mid-sized city. We're a little city, 6 miles across. More, if Uber could, just as we talked about, take the driver out of the equation and do this at 20 or 30 cents a mile rather than $1 a mile, how big would that market be? How interested would you be in owning your own car? So Uber then turns and says, we're going to develop autonomous cars. And who do they turn to? Do they turn to Detroit? Do they turn to Munich? No. They turn to Carnegie Mellon University and a bunch of robot guys. So what I would say to you is, let's think about all the ramifications of how transit works. Let's think about how autonomous driving, autonomous cars, autonomous trucks, how's that going to change the world? You're going to have, think about playing Sim City. Think about what goes into a city, what comes out of a city. Do you still need car repair? Do you still need emergency rooms? Do you still need, but maybe you need more charging stations? Maybe the utility's completely disrupted? The whole world changes. When the inside isn't moving and the outside is going fast, Jack Welch says you're in trouble. And how many companies here can say their strategic planning people, their creative people are going as fast as the fastest guys in the valley? And if you're not, look out, because somebody's there to eat your lunch. Thank you.